I would say number one, stop talking about yourself. The very first thing.
Great advice.
Talk to your target audience's problems and how you help serve that problem and how you help to fix that problem. That's the number one thing I would say. The other thing that I notice after looking at literally thousands of these roofing companies' websites in the past couple of years is make it easy to contact you.
Hi, and welcome to the 91 Day Success Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan, and today I've got with me Chris Hunter from roofingsites.com. And I'm so excited, Chris, to chat with you. Not only do you run a great agency, but I absolutely love your book, The Ultimate Guide to Digital Marketing for Roofers. And I'm really curious about diving into your proven 4R roofing system and hearing about that. I love how you've got systems in place. And just welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Start by telling everybody that's listening that may not know you, Chris. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your agency.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks, Jonathan, for having me on here.
Absolutely.
So my name is Chris Hunter, and I own a company called roofingsites.com. We help roofing companies grow by getting their internet marketing right. It's just really that simple. We use the 4R roofing marketing system, and that's what I wrote my book on, The Ultimate Guide to Digital Marketing for Roofers. And it stands for reputation is the first R, okay, because you can't do anything that really works in marketing unless you have a solid reputation. It's kind of like your foundation, and if you're thinking of it as a house, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Reach is the next R, and basically that's getting in front of more people today than knew about you yesterday. You know, pretty much what most people think about marketing, okay, is really
Absolutely.
in that pillar. The next pillar is resell. You're 15 times more likely to sell to someone who has purchased from you before and had a solid experience. But very little small businesses, much less roofers, actually do this or do it well at all. So that's that pillar. And then the next pillar is what we all built our businesses on, and that's referrals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we just but yet the bigger that you scale your business, the bigger that you get in business, the less good that you do this pillar at all, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
And
absolutely.
so it's just something that gets overlooked as businesses grow, and it's just such an easy strategy to implement on any business.
No, I love that. And I love that you've got a proven process that you're following because that means you can deliver those repeatable results for your clients across the board. So, Chris, if we take a step back, how did you get into the digital marketing arena? What caused you to choose it as opposed to anything else in the world?
Well, that is a great question. I ran across digital marketing, and it really back then it wasn't digital marketing, it was really web design is how I started out in this industry. And I started that
Hmm.
when I was working on this jet back behind me. That's F-117. I was working long hours out on the flight line for the Air Force, and you know, the station that I was based at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Guess what? It's out in the desert. So
Hmm.
it gets hot. It gets really, really hot. And, it was one of those days that I think it was about 120 degrees outside. I went to
Oh
go
my
pick up my
goodness.
toolbox that I'd left in the sun, grabbed it, and it burnt my hand. And I'm like,
Oh,
this is ridiculous. So I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And so while I was in the Air Force, I was also attending, college classes, learning how to program like C++, basic, Visual C++, all these database, classes and stuff like that. And I came across a class that that really grabbed my attention. I really just kind of ran with it, and we built this is the early 2000s, mind you. Okay, so very early internet days. And I built a website using PHP and MySQL and built a database driven website,
hmm.
right? And just kind of started figuring out, oh, this is kind of cool. I like doing this. Maybe I could do this for a living. So I started building websites on the side as a side hustle, quote unquote, right?
Sure.
while I was in the Air Force there, and it really started with some nonprofit organizations on the base, and started kind of figuring out what the process would be on building, websites. And
Sure.
was doing this at the time, with using Notepad and Photoshop,
Mhm.
right? Way back in the
Mhm.
day, and,
Absolutely.
building HTML and all that kind of stuff. And I I got a call one morning. I worked night shift at that time, and I got a call, right as I was coming off shift one day, in the middle of the week. I had a tech sergeant come up to me. He's like, "Hey, Hunter, you need to go see the general." So So if you don't know anything about the military, I was a three-stripe, airman. Going and seeing a general, a one-star general, was a huge jump
Oh,
in the
yeah.
chain of command, okay? And so that kinda stopped me in my tracks, needless to say. And, and I'm like, what for? Why do I need to see the general? Why does he want to see me? What did I do? Those are all these things that I'm asking my tech sergeant, as well as things running through my brain of like, okay, what did I do? What did I do? What
Yeah,
did I
because it
do?
can't be good. It's like the principal's
No,
office, but worse, right?
it's worse than it's like going to
Oh,
the
yeah.
superintendent, right? Um, so so fast forward a little bit, I'm in his office, standing at attention and just sweating because I just really didn't
Bet.
know what was going to
Oh,
happen.
yeah.
And he did the whole power move thing. He was sitting watching the flight line behind him, right? And came right around in his chair like this right here, said, "Hunter, I've heard a lot of things about you on the base." I'm like, "Oh," and I'm like, I'm just racking my brain. I'm racking my
Yeah, what
brain.
did
I'm
I
like,
do?
"Oh
What did I
no."
do?
Yeah. And he says, "Well, I've seen some of the websites that you've been building, and I got to tell you, I don't have anyone worth their salt." And that's the nice way of putting that, right? I
Yep.
don't have anyone worth their salt on doing stuff like this. Would you want to come off the flight line to work on the base website? And I'm like, no hesitation whatsoever. I'm like, Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir." You know, and he said, "Well, okay, well, how long do you think it'd take?" And I'm like, really at that time, I was so brand new to the whole industry, and everything was by hand. I was like, I think it'll take a couple of months. I'm not quite sure, sir. And he's like, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll take you off the flight line for 3 months. Do you think you could do it then?" I'm like, "Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. I can work in air conditioning. Yes, sir."
Yes. That
Um,
is
so
awesome.
So built the website, and it was kind of pretty much from that day forward. I would say, every superhero has their origin story. That's probably my origin story, is right then and there, because when I drove off, I was like, this is exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life.
Oh, I love it. Great story too. I mean, just to see how all that came together and taking advantage of that. One of the things I love that we talked to a lot of successful business owners and agency owners, and one of the things I love is hearing how, again, what got you that start? What was that? And then
Yeah.
what did you take advantage of while you were doing it to take advantage of that opportunity that presented itself? So many people get those and "Phew, okay, it was 90 days in AC and now I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing." But
Right.
to take that and let it inspire you is just amazing. Always good to
Yeah.
hear too that when you got to go talk to the power that it turned out good. 'Cause
It could have
we've
gone
all been
really
there, I
bad.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Wow. So, well, thank you for your service, by the way. We really do
Thank you.
appreciate that. That's
Thank you.
awesome. What brought you from New Mexico back into, because you're in Texas now, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
What
Yep.
brought you back to Texas?
So when my wife and I were trying to decide, where were we going to go when I got out of the Air Force,
Hmm.
the Air Force will drop you off just about anywhere. And she's from Houston, I'm from West Texas, and I knew that for a fact that I did not want to go back to West Texas. And she really didn't want to go back to Houston. We would if we needed to, but for the most part, we decided, let's go back to where we can raise a family, right?
Hmm.
And that was College Station, Texas. We both were at Texas A&M Aggies. We both went to A&M, and so Aggie land was kind of where we decided to come back to here in College Station.
I love
And
it.
yeah, and at that time, we just came back here. I came back here with the intention to go back to school and to get a degree. in management information systems, and that's when I started up my web design firm, and I just never really looked back, honestly, you know.
Mm.
So, really just kind of built that up over the years. Past that was in 2001 when I got out of the military, and we came back here. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So you've been building websites then since probably the late 90s, I'm guessing, with your
Mhm.
service. Is that correct?
So the late when that story that I told you, that was probably 1999-ish
Okay.
time frame, when I did that. And I started working with small businesses, in the Alamogordo, New Mexico. That's right, the city or the, town right outside of,
Yep.
Holloman Air Force Base. I started working with small businesses there. That was a hard sell back then, by the way. That was coming right off the dot-com bubble
I
burst,
was
and
going to say right in the dot
yeah.
com burst. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard sell, but I sold one or two here and there. And then when I came here to College Station, it started becoming easier and easier to sell websites. So I partnered up with an IT um, company here in College Station that helped basically funnel customers to me that
Hmm.
needed help with their websites. Um, and just kind of went from there. About 2005, we started offering search engine optimization, because my clients were practically begging me to do for them what we'd already done for ourselves, which at that time
Yeah.
I'd taken up all 10 spots on Google, using what I call now my domination strategy. And basically, we got every single one of the leads that came looking for web design in College Station at that time.
That's fantastic. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. It reminds me a bit of my start. I sold my first website in 1995,
Okay.
and I was working for another company. And then, fast forward again, kind of like you're talking about, when I started my next agency, which was years later.
Hmm.
It was, or I should say, my first agency. It was really interesting to go through that. And you're right, web design is a very common way to get in, and it's a easy way. Everybody needs a website.
Hmm.
And certainly, I didn't sell them during the dot-com boom, but I can't imagine trying to do it around there because it would have been a hard sell, like you said,
Yeah.
to get people to do that. But
Hmm.
nowadays, certainly, it's well understood. It reminds me of a question I got asked the other day, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. So,
Sure.
you and I both, we talked to a lot of people, and one of the questions that came up was, nowadays with as popular as social media are, and that's where everybody's spending all their time,
Mhm.
does a business really still need a website? Now, I've got a very strong opinion about that, but I'd love to hear yours, having been in the industry a long time as well.
Mm.
Why do they or don't they, in your mind, need a website in 2023? Well, 2024 now, as we're recording this, just
Yeah.
into the new year.
So the short answer is yes, you absolutely need a website. It's your home base of operation. It's your foundation. That's actually part of my reputation pillar, is a
Hmm.
website, because honestly, if you don't have a website in this day and age, are you really a business? And that's the first thing that goes through
Absolutely.
people's minds. And the last thing that you want going through people's minds is this person really serious about business.
Yes.
Um, the other part is really related to Google, is that without a website in Google's eyes, you might not be considered a business, right? And
Mm.
so therefore you're not going to be placed above other companies that have a website inside a Google business profile in Google Maps, specifically. You're not going to be able to get a local service ad, right? You're not going to be able to even get ads themselves, because Google won't let you advertise on their platform without sending traffic to a website. You literally have to have one.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. And my response was very similar to yours. Is
Mhm,
it's one of the few things online that you can control as a business nowadays, and it's
mhm,
absolutely needed to prove that, if nothing else, you're real. It's kind of like an email address to me. I still
right.
see startups that are going out and using a Gmail address, and I
Mhm,
understand why, because it's easy. But what
yeah.
I want to, I want to almost shake that business owner and go, look, for a few dollars a month,
Few.
you could have
Yeah.
a branded email address, and
Mhm,
you wouldn't raise any questions of whether you're working out of your garage or not. And ironically, after COVID, I don't think people care about you working out of your garage so much anymore, but they want
no,
to make sure you're a legitimate business. And
absolutely.
especially in the home services niche, where I know you're at with roofers,
Mhm,
you know, I don't think people mind where your office is. They want to make sure that you're legitimate. If I'm going to give you tens of thousands of dollars to put a roof
Yeah.
on my house, I want you to be legitimate. And simple little things like that email just amaze me,
Mhm.
and a website even more so. I mean, it doesn't have to be complex, but like you said,
No.
you need to validate who you are.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, you've been doing this as long as I have, so you probably remember the day that Facebook decided they were going to actually charge everybody who had a Facebook business page $10,000. And
Wow. Yeah.
fortunately, by the end of the day, they changed their mind on that. I think they thought
Yeah.
they were going to make some easy money. But I remember a lot of people realized at that time that, wow, they'd invested, and this was in, I want to say, early 2000s.
Mhm.
They'd invested a couple years at that point in time putting it together. And I know I'm wrong because Facebook wasn't around then. This was 20, probably
Early
20.
2010s. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Early 2010s. People put years into building that profile, and all of a sudden Facebook's like, oh, sorry, this morning it's
Mhm.
$10,000 to have access to all that. And
Yeah.
you've just lost all that work because you have no control. At least with
Right.
a website, it's an asset of your business. You own it.
Mhm.
You may decide to change hosting platforms, you may change
Mhm.
web developers, but it's still your stuff. So no,
Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
agree with you on that. Well,
Mhm.
that explains a lot. How about roofing? So, yeah, you and I both started more generalist and then got into specifics. How did you get into the roofing niche, and why did you pick that, Chris?
Well, honestly, that first customer, that first client was a roofer, right?
Oh, wow.
That
How cool.
very first person that talked me into doing for them what we had done for ourselves, right? And which was getting ranked on Google, right? And at that
Hmm.
time in 2005, really the only thing that was around at that time was the organic listings and ads. Ads that were brand spanking new at that time. Nobody trusted them. Nobody really used them. They
Hmm.
were cheap. They were very
Oh,
cheap
yeah,
at the time, right? If you remember that, they're like 1 and 2
I
cent
do.
clicks. Um, the good old days of Google Ads. But
Mhm.
for the most part, everyone trusted organic more than anything. And so we were forced, not forced, but we had to figure out our process, right? And that's what we did. We just sat there, and me and my project manager at the time that was in charge of all these web design, we sat down, we're like, how do we do this? We've sold it, you know, how do we do it now? And so we just kind of step by step went through our process, and honestly, the recipe back then isn't a whole lot different than the recipe that we use today for getting ranked on Google. So we figured out that, well, it has to start with landing pages because that's where you're sending people to, right?
Yep.
Number
Yep.
two, you have to have content. Well, content on a regular basis, something like, and this is way before blogs even became popular, but we were starting to create articles in order to attract those search engine spiders to the website at that time. And we started doing that, and then we started finding good backlink sources, sources that were in their industry uh, link back from, things like
Hmm.
at the time, Better Business Bureau, right? That's always
Oh, yeah.
been one of the big ones for me. The Chamber of Commerce was another big link. The NRCA, this guy was a member of the NRCA, the National Roofing Contractors Association. So we made sure that all those links were starting to, link back to his website. And we just kind of went from there. We started doing all sorts of other linking and testing, and seeing if we could, what we were doing was going to help really move the needle. So, and of course, that's
Absolutely.
the early days of search engine optimization before Google really, started changing their algorithms as much as they do nowadays.
Well, but one of the things you shared that I really like about what you said there, Chris, is that it's, in a lot of ways, it's the same things you're doing. I mean, there's certainly been
Mhm.
changes in SEO, but it's everybody's, what's the latest thing? What's the latest thing? And it's like,
Yeah.
I think it's always been, if you create good, relevant content for your audience,
Mhm.
and your audience engages with your content, Google's going to reward you by sending you more people like them because it's going to see what's happening with that. And yes, I
Right.
know there are tons of techniques that you can use to maybe get a little bit better, but I'm not an SEO expert, never have claimed to be, but I do
Yeah.
think that you get 80% of the way there just by understanding your audience and creating good content for your audience.
Mhm.
What's your thoughts on that as far as you take a look at it?
So good content to me is just making sure that it's educational in nature. And I've
Hmm.
always been a huge believer that education sells, and that's always what, even from the early days of 2005, when we were first starting to work in the roofing industry. Uh, okay, well, we have to provide 10 tips of how to know if your roof is bad. I'm
Hmm.
horrible at coming up with titles. That's
No,
why
but I get
you
it.
know
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
we have editors and writers, and now ChatGPT helps us with that stuff, but, the process is still the same. You have to come up with content, right, that people are actually gonna engage with, um, and when we say engage nowadays, that's different than what it was back then. Back then, it was just getting visitors to the website. Now this
Hmm.
is engagement on different levels, different channels like Facebook and Twitter, X, I guess now, um, LinkedIn and Google Business Profile even, right? And making sure that you're getting people to actually, uh, comment and share and
Hmm.
like on those articles, right? That it actually makes sense to those people.
Absolutely. Well, and again, I just think that that's something so many people miss because they get so focused on what's the latest tip, the latest trick, the latest thing that
Yeah.
we can do. And at the end of the day, I've always said Google wants to deliver the best results to
Mhm.
the people that are doing the query. How it does that, it may be changing, but the goal really is the same, to deliver those
Sure.
good, high quality results, because people are going to stop using Google if they don't get the results they're looking for ultimately.
Absolutely.
Um,
Right.
I don't know about your crystal ball. I know mine's a bit cracked and cloudy, but as you take a look at 2024 and possibly even beyond that, but let's talk 2024 since we're recording this in January.
Mhm.
What are some of the key things you think roofers need to be looking at as they talk about digital marketing in 2024? Are there any key trends, changes, maybe things that just roofers aren't doing that they should be in general?
Well well, there's a ton of things, right,
Fair enough.
that I see on a daily basis. I mean, we have audited, sorry, the roofing industry doesn't like that word. We've assessed, um,
Ah, yes.
over 1,000 roofing companies' marketing, right? And so the biggest things that I see them not doing, um, are having those service pages plus location, okay, their
Hmm.
landing pages. They don't have those at all. A lot of the websites that we see are one-page websites. Google's never going to like that website, okay?
Right.
Google is about content, it's about text specifically, right? If you don't have pages full of text that match up with what the people are searching for, you're never gonna be rewarded. That's the
Right.
first thing. And this has been all the way down to 2005. So this is not a new thing. Okay. What's new, however, is that your competition has access to tools like ChatGPT that can help crank content out, right, on a massive level and essentially do what you're not doing. So if you're not doing this on a regular basis, creating landing pages and creating useful content that people can read and that resonate with them, then you're just going to lose overall. And AI in general, there are tons and tons of AI tools. You know this more than me, Jonathan. I'm in your AI group, two of your groups.
Thank
You
you.
know, and I mean, you as us marketers have to be on the forefront for sure, right? Of the whole AI revolution, if you want to call it that. Okay, we have to be because we can get phased out if we are not on the forefront of this, okay?
100%.
But roofing companies and all service companies need to also be paying attention to this, okay? Because guess what? Your competition is. And if you're not doing something that your competition is doing, then you're just going to lose out overall.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good advice. It's interesting to me that, and maybe it's because there's been so much press on both sides of the local service pages, that
Mhm.
those are not common. I think you probably know Dennis Yu like I did. I just had a
Yeah.
conversation with him briefly the other day, and then saw some things that he'd shared, and he was sharing that. And I know there's multiple opinions on this, so I don't know
Mhm.
where you stand, but that while Google has a policy against duplicate content, if you're on the same domain and you're creating content that's helpful, the likelihood of you being penalized for having local service pages that are substantially similar is
Mhm.
probably quite low. And I
Yeah.
know, again, there are some people that definitely disagree with that, but I know my experience, just seat of the pants, and what I've done is,
Mhm.
again, if it's on my domain and I'm
Mhm.
writing stuff that's still relevant, if a good chunk of that local service page is similar to another page, Google
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily care because they understand I can't write, if I'm going to write something for the 3 cities around me or the 10 cities around me, I can't
Mhm.
write totally unique content for that in every aspect, because how to choose a roofer and the services that we provide and all that are going to be the same. The city information may be different and all that. What
Yeah.
type of best practices do you recommend, Chris, when it comes to those local service pages?
So, and that is a great question. I am on a different spectrum than most SEOs, okay, as far as that goes. And that's
Fair enough.
because we built a tool in 2014 to help us build landing pages specifically. Okay.
Mm, okay.
Um, and because that was our biggest bottleneck as an SEO company, and my current business partner is a programming type guy, and that was the first question that he asked when we went into business is, what is your biggest bottleneck? So I said, well, the biggest, honestly, is building those pages, right? That's the one thing that doesn't scale. Which is why, by the way, most SEO companies will only give you 10 or 20 keywords tops that they're working on. Okay.
Hmm.
With our tool, we come in and we build 400 landing pages the day that we launch the website. Okay.
Wow.
We also add 400 more every single quarter until we get to around 3,000 landing pages. Okay. And that's simply, we found that that's the limit of what WordPress can
Sure.
handle as far as, landing pages itself. Our tool works within WordPress itself, but
Mhm.
um, it's, it works. It works very well, for short and long tail keywords, right? And if you're listening to this, you don't understand what short and long tail, basically, short would be roofing company in College Station, Texas. A long tail would be roofing company shingle repair in College Station, Texas. That would be a long tail keyword. So, there's a lot of long tail keywords that are out there that most SEOs completely 100% ignore, and those are the easiest ones to get ranked for. Okay, so
Mhm.
I highly, highly recommend those long tail ones because someone's going to search eventually on that, and you want to be number one when they do.
Well, one of the things I love about that strategy, and if you're a roofer out there, it's one of the reasons to talk to Chris and his team. But one of the things I love about that strategy is the fact that, yes, that I know when it comes to SEO, we all want the big word. We want the one that everybody's searching for.
Yeah.
But we have to remember what's going to drive the sale. It
Mhm.
reminds me of many years ago, when I was making a sales call, and I didn't, not my client, but I reached out and talked to a company that made maps. And you may have been like in a pizza parlor. They've got a wall map, maybe 6 by 6. It's got just the
Yeah.
community on it, generally
Yeah.
plastic coated, so they can draw on it in highlighters and figure out where the delivery drivers got to go. And nowadays with GPS, I'm probably dating myself, we don't need those anymore.
Yeah.
Anyway, they used to be really popular in pizza parlors.
Right.
And I walked in to talk to him, and the first words out of his mouth is, "Don't try to sell me Google Ads." And I go, "Actually, I'm here to talk to you about a website. I don't want one of those either." He's, "None of that online stuff works." And I'm like, "Okay, you're pretty adamant about this. Can you tell me what's going on?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We just got done spending $5,000 on Google Ads and we didn't get any sales from it." And I said, "Wow,
Wow.
tell me more about that." And he goes, "Well," he goes, "we decided to place some ads." And he goes, "We spent $5,000 in under 48 hours." And I'm like, "Okay."
Ooh. Yeah.
And by the way, just to set the stage, this company made those big maps, and they
Uh-huh.
did it in 12 cities in the United States. All those
Wow.
cities were on the east of the Mississippi. So not a big coverage. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "We had it figured out. We wanted to make sure we were going to be known for maps. And so we advertised and bought the keyword maps and maxed out our spend on it." And I go, "Okay."
Jeez.
I'm thinking, well, mistake number one, because at a minimum, you should have done wall maps at a minimum. I
Yeah.
mean, we could do a lot more. And he goes, "And on top of that," he goes, "like I said, we spent that money in under 48 hours." And I'm like, "Well, you guys are in how many cities?" He goes, we're in 12 cities. And I go, "Did you limit it to those cities?" "Well, no, we advertised nationwide." And I'm going, "Okay. You advertised for maps nationwide, and probably less than 1% of the people searching for that want you." But he's
Yeah.
like, "But we wanted to be known for maps." And I'm like, "But you missed the point. The
Yeah, it's
point
down to
was, had you
branding.
done wall maps in the 12 cities you were in, you probably would have spent $500 and sold 50 of them.
Mhm.
And that reminds me of exactly what you're saying. So many people, these SEOs, they're focusing on roofers when
Right.
that's great. But if I'm in College Station and I'm searching for best roofing company for roof repair in College
Mhm.
Station, and with voice search, I'm even more likely to make a long tail keyword search like that. You're
Yeah.
right. You're making it so easy. And even if there's only 3 searches a month, if you're number 1 and you get those 3 phone calls, there's a
Mhm.
very high potential to buy off those long tail keywords, and that means those 3 that now come to you are very likely to turn into conversations for you to sell. At least
Yeah.
that's my perspective. Is that your my onto the
100%.
same thing you are, Chris?
Yeah, 100%, and you multiply that times thousands, and all of a sudden, you know, you've got a massive net, and this is what I tell my clients, would you rather fish with a tiny little itsy bitsy fishing net has only 10 squares in it, or would you rather fish with a fishing net with 10,000 squares in it? Me,
Mhm.
I'd rather fish with a bigger net with more squares that will catch more fish.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a brilliant strategy, and I love to hear that. I'll admit I'm more on your side than I'm on the other side. Although I know there's a lot of SEO guys that disagree with that because again they're so
Mhm.
focused on getting people to rank, for some of these major keywords. But
Yeah.
just like the old saying, there's riches in the niches. I
Mhm.
think there's a lot of riches in the long tail keywords.
Yeah.
And as you said so eloquently, they're so much easier to rank for because your
Yes.
competition's probably not going after those. So,
Right. And at the end of the day, does it matter if you rank for roofer in College Station, Texas, or 10,000, or 3,000 other keywords that are making you money?
well, and the key there again, and I like what you're saying, and I'm reading between the lines, but if I can rank for 3,000 words in and around College Station, Texas, and each of those just gets one search a month that results in a call to me, that's
Mhm.
3,000 calls. Let's just say that's crazy, and it's only 10% of that. That's still
Yeah.
300 calls I get every month, as
Mhm.
opposed to me now trying to compete on that top ranking keyword, which is going to cost me a lot more money, and
Mhm.
I'm likely not going to rank as well because now all those subjective factors do come into play. Now
Right.
all those little things do matter to get you that little bit higher. We
Mhm.
know that the leads go primarily to the top 3 spots, absolutely to the top 10 spots.
Yep.
So I need to be able to rank for those keywords so that my phone rings. And I love that strategy. It makes so much sense. Probably a little more technical, but I'm curious. Not being a web design expert, even though I've sold a lot of
Yeah.
websites. Um, what what do you find happens if you go too many landing pages on WordPress specifically? Why do you stop at
Yeah.
that 3 to 4,000?
Well, it's kind of a double combination here is that it slows the website down
Yeah.
essentially, right? And it makes the database a little bit too big. Now you could probably get really good hosting. You could get a server all on its own and spend a couple $100 a month for that, right? And it would probably work just fine. But most companies have their website on shared hosting, right? They
Hmm.
go for the uh, cheap version, right, of hosting, for the most part. Our packages, our programs, we bake it in, we vet it out, hundreds of different hosting companies, and we're on what we feel is the best hosting package out there, right? The best hosting platform. However, even with that platform, it still is a shared hosting environment. You're not on a one-to-one, server that
Right.
is a standalone computer all by itself, and so therefore it it just doesn't have the resources that it needs. Now we could spend, like I said, a couple $100 and do that and achieve that and build out more pages. But for the most part, the sweet spot really is those 3,000 keywords.
I love it. I love that makes so much sense, and you're right. And while this isn't about hosting, I'm definitely on the bandwagon that you get what you pay for when it comes to
Mhm.
hosting,
Yep.
and it doesn't mean you have to break the bank. You can get some really great hosting for say $25 to $50 a month,
Yeah.
but the $3 a month packages
Oh,
is
yeah.
you're it's how much poo can you shovel into a bag, and they're going to keep shoveling until the bag
Yep.
breaks, and that means your website's going to be
Oh,
slow.
yeah.
And
Yep.
more and more every year it gets slower. People aren't going to wait for that. I mean, how many times if if you're listening to this, how many times have you pulled your phone up to go to a website and you get a blank screen and you go one, two, never mind, it ain't working. And
Yeah.
you go to the next person on Google. If you're the business owner that had that number one ranking and I go to get to your website and it's not loading in certainly 3 seconds,
Hmm.
there's a problem and you're
Absolutely.
losing all of that effort that you put into getting
Mhm.
that click by having a slow website.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. That's great. That's a huge value bomb, by the way. If you're listening and you hadn't picked up on that, you're in the home services business in general, or just for that matter, you're serving a local clientele.
Mhm.
Ask yourself how many of those local service pages you have. My guess is 99% of you don't have any. And
Yeah.
what a great simple tip in order to really start jumping and leaping ahead of your competition. Chris, that's a wonderful tip. As you
Thank
look forward, you mentioned that's one of the big ones. We talked a little bit about, well, I should say, you talked a little bit about AI and that. Where do you see the role of AI fitting into marketing? I have my opinion. You probably know what that is, but
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Chris. And how does a business owner balance the time it takes to learn how to use AI properly? Because AI
Yeah.
is it's garbage in, garbage out.
Mhm.
How do they balance that, and how can they use AI maybe in some simple ways to help improve their marketing?
So the short answer is that you need to be looking at AI as an assistant. I think that's really
Mm,
the key to it all, and not as it's going to replace everything and everyone, right? It might, maybe down the road, it might be able to replace whole people, but as of right now, what I see it as is a tool.
mhm,
It is in the roofing industry, and I talk about this a lot. Is it's kind of the same thing almost as when the air hammer came out, right? When they're putting shingles up on a roof instead of a regular hammer, right? How fast that you can move. Okay. So the way that I am currently using AI as an assistant specifically is for doing specific tasks like content tasks, some of those landing pages, right? The blogs, right? I learned from you, Jonathan, how to build blogs inside a Chat GPT. Um, you know, there's a lot of things that you can use it for. Emails, right? If you're not
mhm.
quite sure how to answer someone, I've
One of
used
my
it for what.
favorites.
Yeah, I've used it for when I was like, "Okay, I know I shouldn't respond this way back to
Yes,
this person,
absolutely.
right?
Yes.
Can you give me a more polite way to respond back to this email?" And it does. It does a great job at that for the most part, and you
Mhm,
just have to tweak it here and there. But I think there are a lot of ways to use it moving forward in the future. Sales is going to be a big part of that. I think in this year in 2024, it's going to be a huge part of that for all home services. We've been experimenting with Air AI, which
mhm.
is a platform that you can use to take incoming phone calls on. Okay. And it sounds really close to a human being. You
It
would
does.
not be able to tell the difference. The only way you can tell the difference right now, currently in January 2024, is a few second gap in between when you the human says something and when the chat bot comes back and talks back to you or whatever responses comes back. Um, the other part is using other tools for emails, text messages, and
Mhm.
so forth to answer and to get that lead closer to a sales opportunity for you.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I do think sales is where we're going to see a lot of that
Mhm.
happening because the payback is very quick at that point. And Air AI, by the way, great tool,
Yeah,
amazing stuff. I agree with you. I think right now people are probably going to catch on the fact that with the voice, there's just enough of a lag that makes you go, hang on, why are you taking a second to
right,
respond to me? It's not long,
right.
but it's
No, but a
just a
second
little
is
longer.
long.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. Where I see that having tremendous impact is in text-based marketing
Mhm,
and things like that, where, you've got a chat bot on your website, and,
mhm.
I love the ones where that chat turns into a text and it moves it
Yeah,
off of the website so people can move on. But then
mhm.
you can carry on text conversation because it can take 20 seconds at that point to
Yeah,
process, and nobody's gonna care.
no.
And so I really see that being the first part. But I do think I bet a year from now, not only are we going to have the voice stuff that is essentially
Mhm.
indeterminate as far as the difference between that, I think the video is also going to increase there tremendously. And all of the business owners out there that are listening that hate the idea of being on video, and I know that's
Mhm.
99% of you, I believe by the end of 2024, we're going to be there again. It's going to be virtually indistinguishable. I know right now you can do it and it's not bad, but
Yeah.
it's still a little hokey. It's almost a little
Yeah.
cheesy. It's like, okay, not there
Yeah.
yet. But I
Especially
think we're going
us
to see
with
some big
beards.
changes. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Beards
Yeah.
cause a problem with that
Yeah.
because they don't replicate that well enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
very, very interesting when you say that.
Yeah.
So as if we've got a roofer listening and they're like, okay, I've got so many things I could do. One of the things you talked about early on, I didn't go back to, is the importance of having an effective website,
Yeah.
more than just a single page. I don't know if a website needs to be, well, let me just ask you, does a website need to be monumental and huge to be effective? Or what aspects should if I'm a roofer out there today and I'm
Mhm.
going, okay, man, Chris knows what he's talking about. I can tell. I love
Yeah.
what he's saying. What if I'm going to look at my website to determine, do I need to take a look at reevaluating that, updating it, making changes? What are some of the
Mhm.
questions I should be asking as a roofing company about my website?
And that's a great question. So I I would say number 1, stop talking about yourself. The very first thing.
Great advice.
Talk to your target audience's problems and how you help serve that problem and how you help to fix that problem. That's the number one thing I would say. The other thing that I notice after looking at literally thousands of these roofing companies' websites in the past couple of years is make it easy to contact you. You
Oh,
can't
yes.
imagine how many websites that we come across that don't have a phone number anywhere on their website. They don't have where they actually are located, right? You're
Hmm.
like, okay, where are you located at? I can't even tell. And I have to go to Google to put their company name in to figure out where they're actually located at. So if you put yourself in your customer's shoes and they've actually somehow run across your website, the very first thing that goes through their mind is, are these guys local?
Yes.
And if you can't answer that because your phone number isn't a local phone number in the top right hand corner of your website,
Thank you.
or or that your address is nowhere to be found on that website, then they're going to move on because they're going to go, well, these guys aren't even local here. Okay,
Right.
so those are the big things that I see. The other parts are just and we've gone back and forth over the years on personalization to stock photography to I think the way that the internet and most people are nowadays, they want to do business with people. So you've got to
Yeah.
have pictures of you, your staff, the jobs that you've done, that you have accomplished successfully on your website. Okay. I think that all of those things kind of play into it. And the other thing is, I would say have your reviews on your website because that goes back into that reputation piece of,
Mm.
okay, other people have used this company before. Oh, this person said they did a great job. Just make sure that those little pieces, and I say little because this does not take a lot of time to copy and paste from your Google business profile reviews onto your website. It does not take long at all. And in fact, there are plugins out there that we use that pulls them in dynamically.
Wow, great advice. It reminds me of just this past weekend. My wife and I recently moved, and we were looking for some restaurants in the area. I know that's not roofing companies,
Yeah.
but it amazes me how many restaurants, when you go look, you can't find their menu.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't, you're okay. So you're a Chinese place. That's great. You've got decent reviews, but I'd like to know, do you have this dish or do you have that? And I can't
Yeah.
find out. And then the other thing you mentioned was address.
Mhm.
Again, as a roofing company, I may not need to come to your location, but I'm
Mhm.
going to be a lot more likely to hire you if you're in College Station and I live in
Yes.
College Station
Yeah.
than if you're in, New Mexico and I
Yeah.
live in College Station. And
Yeah.
your competitors in New Mexico might just be advertising if they have enough
Mhm.
teams. So that address is so incredibly important. Oh, beautiful
Well,
stuff
and
there.
And going back to that is that here in College Station, Texas, we're 90 miles northwest of Houston. Okay. Every single time that there's a hailstorm up here in College Station, guess what happens? Tons and tons of roofers come up here, right, from Houston because they're
Hmm.
chasing that storm. They're chasing the hail that came from that
Yep.
storm, right? And they knock doors. They knock on doors. Well, you might or might not get a sale out of that, but the problem is that most people think, okay, this is a Houston company. Are they going to be able to service? Are they going to be able to uphold their warranty that they're telling me,
Exactly.
right? If they're down in Houston, are they actually going to drive up here to repair a leak? You know, so those are the psychological things that you've got to think about in your whole marketing strategy, and not just on your website, but I'm talking on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, everywhere that you are presenting your brand. You've got to think about these little tiny psychological triggers, right? That
Mm.
things that are going through people's brains.
Absolute brilliance. Just, yeah, I mean, cannot begin to describe how important those things are. And you're right, because, they're interested in chasing it when everybody in your neighborhood needs a roof repair. They're not
Yeah.
interested in coming fixing it when one person in your neighborhood needs to have it fixed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that 90-mile drive just became insurmountable for a fix that maybe has to be covered under warranty, and they're not
Right,
going to get paid for. That
right.
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Well, Chris, one of the things we love to ask all of our guests, and there's no right or wrong answer, and I did not
Mhm,
prep you for this one, so don't worry if you don't have one at the top spot. But we call the podcast the 91 Day Success Podcast.
mhm,
And we do that based on the fact that when we kicked off, there were a lot of people talking about starting new ventures and new jobs. If you had to start over, or if you were advising
mm,
someone that was going to start a new business and they just had $1,000 to spend on the business, they didn't have to worry about
mhm.
their house, they didn't have to worry about food, but the business could only use $1,000.
Okay.
Things might you recommend they do, or would you do to build something that would be generating $10,000 a month, hopefully by the end of
Mhm.
90 days or 3 months? Any thoughts on what you might recommend or what strategies you might employ for something like that?
So, for a roofer, okay, I'm gonna come at it from a roofer standpoint because I do work with so many of these guys. Number one thing is build a website. Build your website. Start building the foundation of everything, okay? Um, Build a logo. If you don't have a logo,
Mhm.
there are tons and tons of logo designers out there. There are some free AI ones that you can even use that are out there that'll build a logo for you, or you can just go to Canva.
I was gonna say, what about Canva? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and tell it actually, they've got the magic, thing built into Canva now that you can have it build a logo for you. So, I that's probably the best thing that you could do because you wanna take that brand and you wanna put that on your truck, you wanna put that on your shirts, on your hats, right? Start presenting a professional image, first of all. If you sub out crews, which most roofers at the beginning stages do, okay,
Mhm.
have the crews wear a T-shirt that is branded. I went by a job site the other day. I was on a walk and I walked by, and the roofing company, who's a very big roofing company here in the College Station area. I don't work with them, by the way, right? Um, it's a pretty big company here. They had a sign out front, and that was the only reason I knew it was them. Their trucks were not branded for their sub crews. Fine. Okay, I get that. Put a magnet on that at least, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, none of their crew matched in any kind of uniform whatsoever. And I could just tell this by looking at their crews because they had mismatching shirts. You
Sure.
know, um, there's other types of things like a catch-all that you can have. That's a little bit more expensive. It's a thing that's designed
Yep.
to catch all of the things coming off of the roof. Um, that usually you can get branded, put your logo on that, right? So, but for $1,000, I would start with the logo. You can do for free, and it doesn't
Yep.
need to be fancy, doesn't need to be crazy. Keep it simple. A website you can get built for free or do it yourself pretty easily with the tools that are out there. In fact, I ran across an AI tool today that can build an entire website for you for free. Okay. Um, things. The next thing that I would do is start running some get qualified to run run local service ads. We are seeing lots
Mm,
of customers of ours that that's simply the only thing that they're doing, and they get leads in right away. People calling them and filling out forms to come to them. So those would be the three things that I would do right away.
great advice, and I think it makes again so much sense based on our conversation today, because especially as a roofer, it's about trust. Nobody wants to have
Mhm.
you up working on their home, replacing their roof, spending that money if they don't trust you.
Yeah,
It's a huge
correct.
value. Well, Chris, if
Right.
we've got people, we have people watching, we have some people listening, and that they want to reach out. If they're in the roofing industry and they're like, "Wow, your message
Yeah.
really resonates with them," what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Easiest way is to go to roofingsites.com. There is a button in the upper right hand corner. There's a phone number up there too, but there's a button up there that you can schedule a meeting with me if you're a roofer. Um, the next way is just to email me straight out at chris.hunter@roofingsites.com or call us. I'm not sure what our phone number is off the top of my head. That's horrible
Let's
to
let's
say,
let's let's
but
go find out a minute. We'll
it's
we'll
in
add
the
it
upper
and
right hand corner of my website. I know it's an
we'll
888
put it.
number.
Yeah, it's 888-308-2168. So that's 888-308-2168, and we'll put that in the show notes as well, Chris, just to make sure that it's there.
Awesome.
So
Awesome. That's
well,
cool.
again, I want to thank you for your time, Chris. You've been an amazing guest and so many amazing knowledge bombs here. This has just been stellar. I love it. I talk to a lot of agencies, and I really appreciate your focus on what I would call blocking and tackling, the stuff that works
Mm.
every single time. It may not always be glitzy, but it works. And that's what drives results and brings a better ROI. And so I just want to commend you on that. I'm totally impressed with the system and the way you've done it. That's amazing. So,
Awesome.
any
Thank you so much.
any final words for our audience?
No, just take care of your brand, and market well. Take your time, block it out, and use it for marketing.
Absolutely. Well, and I want to thank everyone that's listened to the podcast as well. You guys are why we do this. It's to get your attention and to hopefully add value to your life. And I hope we've done that. I know Chris has just shared some amazing things today. We so appreciate you. We would ask if you like the podcast, please give us a great review and make sure to set the reminder to get notified anytime we have new episodes come out. Every Friday at 10 a.m., we're releasing new episodes with just some of the most amazing guests. So thank you for joining us and make it a great day. We'll see you guys on the other side.